He created his own patch notes for the upcoming patch, and we'll see if he wants to make Orc completely overpowered or if there's reasonability behind it. That's the big question here in the Grubby's Balance Patch Suggestions for Warcraft 3 and Blizzard, May 2024. It is a reaction to the PTR mixed with his own ideas. So let's see what Grubby has to say.
Warcraft 3 is a 22-year-old game for whom Blizzard is still doing balance patches. And this is a little bit surprising. Not a lot of people thought that Blizzard would still be looking at doing balance patches for a game that's that old, especially after what happened with Warcraft Reforged. However, they are doing it, and I would like to help the discussion by coming up with some ideas for my own balance notes.
This is wonderful, by the way. A lot more people should be doing this. A lot more players should be doing this. Of course, I found a wonderful still here, by the way. As a content creator, you have more incentive to do it, but as a player, you also do. But in my opinion, a lot of people sit back and wait, and then later on complain instead of proactively try to put their weight into a discussion. Not all of them, but some of them. So let's see.
You can look at my description to find my previous 2 reviews on the recent PTR patch notes by Blizzard. There have been 2, they're on this channel, and you can check them out. But now I'm going to be combining some of those ideas from Blizzard, alongside with some ideas from the community, and a lot of ideas I cooked up myself, which I think could help push the game in an even better direction. The game is pretty old, but it is still thriving, and while new RTS games are coming out, not all of them may be as memorable, replayable, or long-lasting as Warcraft 3. So I think Warcraft 3 as a cultural heritage is pretty important. So I think we should handle the game design and the balance in a delicate manner. Nonetheless, if we're working with PTRs and a continually willing Blizzard that admittedly doesn't spend as much resources on Warcraft 3 right now, we still have a chance for certain experimental changes that are able to be dialed back should Blizzard remain a part of this process, which, let's face it...
To interrupt you real quick, yeah, I think it is indeed cultural heritage, and I also think that while new RTS are coming out, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of player drain from Warcraft into the other RTS, because Warcraft is so unique in the way it plays and what's important in that game and how it's designed, that players who love Warcraft will not find that love in other games because it's just different points of interest.
It's pretty important because they're the ones that are gonna have to be implementing these changes. Seeing as how they have a will, I put in a lot of effort to come up with some balanced changes that I think would be really interesting. As a precursor and a preface, I should say that a large part of my career has been built on Warcraft 3, and a large part of my current career is still interlaced with Warcraft 3. Even though I have started to play different games as well, in part to make myself also less reliant on Warcraft 3 and the lifeblood of Warcraft 3 and whatever happens with Blizzard, Warcraft 3 is still close and dear to me. And since I'm not a competitive tournament player anymore, I hope it stands to reason to most people that I have more provable benefit from a healthy game with 4 races all enjoying a fun gameplay and a balanced matchup against the other races, rather than in some way trying to create the best possible situation for the race that I primarily competed with, which is Orc.
Nice try, mate.
We all have biases, and I might have Orc biases. So I ask that if you disagree with any part of this tier I almost said tier list. I'm not doing the tier list today, soon. I ask that if you disagree with any part of these balanced notes, that you can express yourself in a mature manner in my YouTube comments. I'll read them, I'll consider it, and we can agree or we can disagree, and we can look at each other's thoughts and hopefully come to the best possible conclusion. And
okay, my proposal, I'm not gonna answer in the YouTube comments, but I'm also not gonna answer in a mature way. So that evens out, I guess. Let's go.
Hope that Blizzard also finds this video useful should they lay eyes on it. And without further ado, let's go to my philosophy for the balance changes.
I'm very curious how he does it. Because it's rather simple to look at one unit in as an isolated case and find ways to make them better, more used, whatsoever. But it's really freaking hard to leave that isolated case and do an overall patch. Also, I wonder if he has restrictions. Like when we Dondo, Save Orcas, you know, do the balance patches, we know that Blizzard won't do engineering. So we, again in quotes, are looking at things that can be changed in an Excel sheet because that is just more realistic. If you get rid of these chains of not asking for engineering, then of course you can do a lot of stuff. And you can be way more creative and way more free. And of course the same goes for if you're looking at units as an isolated case. Everybody can say, well, Wisp should have more HP. But how is that looking in the greater scheme of things? You know, it's not that easy.
My balance patch suggestions are, the philosophy for them are to give every race something fun and new to work with.
Big thumbs up.
To rebalance the matchups and the races a bit as per the needs of the current Warcraft 3 competitive meta.
Big thumbs up.
With a particular emphasis on one-on-one, as that's my specialty.
Yes.
I have competed in 2-on-2.
Again, nobody cares about 4-on-4. I know it's a popular game mode. I don't care about it. Grubby doesn't care about it. Save Orcas and Dondo don't care about it. We disregard this.
Before, and I've also been rank 1 on the FFA ladder and the 4-on-4 ladder before.
I wasn't.
Long time ago, but I don't have as much.
Grubby played FFA? Really? Number 1 FFA? Grubby? I didn't know that.
Extensive insight into those matchups. So if you think any part of this also breaks the 4-on-4 or the FFA meta, which in my opinion is less important than 1-on-1, but it's not unimportant. It is a very important part of especially, you know, the casual player base. So be sure to let me know as well. So my goals are give every race something fun and new to work with, rebalance as per meta needs. I hope to try and enable 1-base human play more while reducing 2-base over-reliance. I'm not sure how.
I don't know if I agree with this because 1-base human games are oftentimes boring.
How much this is possible, but I have come up with some changes maybe that will help it. And I also hate Spellbreaker Mirror, and I think most people don't like it.
Yes.
And it would be so nice if Spellbreaker Mirror was not the primary way to play human versus human.
Yes!
Orc is the only race that cannot tier 1 expand, and it would be nice if that were slightly more viable. Look at any niche and underused and underpowered units for...
He doesn't want to buff Orc the most, huh?
all 4 races and buff them if necessary. And also to continue to build upon the changes that Blizzard has been directing with the recent PTR patch notes, and also any changes that they cooked up that were relatively positively received by the community.
Yeah.
With that said, let's go to the part 2. So let's begin.
I'll say it again. This PTR, by far the less controversial and by far the best, the most supported PTR they ever brought out.
With human. Blizzard posited that Arcane Tower hero feedback should go down from 16 to 14. This has also been discussed in the community before. It used to be 12, but it was buffed to help human defend a bit against harass. Mana burn continues to be an extremely powerful mechanic, just like mana gain through potions has been traditionally an extremely valuable and powerful mechanic. As such, I think
movement speed and mana management are the 2 most important parts of a game.
That most of the numbers for mana burn in the game are generally leaning towards a bit too powerful.
Yes.
And most of the mana buffs that you got from potions had also been too powerful. And we've seen changes like greater mana pot and mana pot giving less mana than before. Wand of Mana Steal is also just a very good item. It was attempted to be buffed before, and I don't feel like it was merited because mana is really valuable. And we see this over and over. So this is a lot of mana burn that, well, it's not fun to lose all your mana. And Arcane Tower is already very good. It has 800 range. No hero wants to stand in it, and it's too punitive. So I think we should bring that down a bit. A lot of talk has been made about Sundering Blades. Sundering Blades gives a 10% attack damage bonus to only...
Shout out to the editor from for switching from Mojo Storm Stout to Liquipedia. This is way more up to date. I criticized this last time. Immediate change. Shout out to Grubby's editor.
Medium armor. That's roughly what attack upgrades generally do. So to simplify Sundering Blades, I see a lot of people talk about Sundering Blades being a kind of special upgrade. It is special in that it only targets a single armor type. Just like Mortar Team's Frag Shards targets medium and unarmored, so the Sundering Blades target only medium. So Sundering Blades, we should understand where it came from. It came alongside with Reforged early changes, was not a part of the old heyday of Warcraft 3. It is a new upgrade that has a pretty badass looking graphic, and it'd be cool to keep that rather than just remove it or something. And Sundering Blades was called into life because Knights have the biggest use application against undead. Knights didn't see a lot of play against Orc. They didn't.
True, man. Knights were clear. It's so crazy that Knights were never played. Never. They were considered a super weak unit.
See a lot of play in Human Mirror because of Spellbreaker timing hitting earlier. We didn't see a lot of Knights against Night Elf because you couldn't really get to it. You generally had to expand or rifle rush, and when you expanded you generally had to hit a tier 2 follow-up timing rather than being able to somehow go to tier 3.
There was also no need for them. Like, it was rare that you were in a direct fight with a melee frontline. Their biggest strength is movement speed and damage, right, compared to Breakers. But Breakers got the damage from feedbacking the bears, so there was really no need for them until we hit the Mountain Giant meta.
So, as a result, this was a targeted change to help Human with Undead. And Human was losing quite a bit against Undead. But the matchup has become more balanced than before. And therefore the life, let's say the justification of Sundering Blade's existence against Fiends isn't as much there.
I'd argue it was 90% targeted towards Mountain Giants. It was also, and that was kind of fine, targeted to get away from Breaker Mirror. Because Knights destroy Breakers, obviously. Fiends, I don't think it was really designed to kill Fiends.
That style has shifted from Fiend timings to Ghoul timings.
Yep.
And Undead have shifted from 1 base play to 2 base play.
Yep.
So the era in which Knights needed a special upgrade to help them deal with Fiends doesn't seem to be upon us anymore. And therefore...
So, here's why I think it was more towards Mountain Giants. Fiends can still be killed easily by Bolt, Holy Light, stuff like that. Even Breakers, because Fiends are not that tanky. Mountain Giants are insanely tanky. And the best way without Knights to play against Mountain Giants was Frag Shards, Bolt, Blizzard, Mortars, that kind of stuff, like a lot of AoE. So you damage as many as possible, not just single target. While there was, of course, like Breakers just tickle Mountain Giants. So Knights were supposed to be like this spearhead to have something more efficient to tackle Mountain Giants.
I am of half a mind to just remove the ability, but I also feel like you could just keep it since the design work has already been put in to allow this upgrade to happen. You know, there's a graphic for it, there's an upgrade for it, so I guess it's just 1 extra attack upgrade, which is at least somewhat unique. Most units have 3 attack upgrades. Knight is gonna essentially have 4 when it's against medium. I say set the cast at like 125, 125. Make it research short, because Blizzard is oscillating between either having it be embedded by default once you reach tier 3, or to need to research it at a cost. And there's no more need for them to have baseline Sundering Blades when they come out of the gate, because those Fiend oppression days are over. But let's not remove it. Let's just make it kind of a normal balanced upgrade that's roughly slightly more the cost than the first attack upgrade, but less than the second attack upgrade from the Blacksmith. Make it 125, 25. Do a middle way between research time 0 and just straight up researched and needing to research it, but don't make it last long either, because it ain't that special. It doesn't greatly change how the game is played. 25 seconds, and that makes it less.
The biggest downside of researching this will of course be later night production. I don't hate it.
Of a friction to upgrade it. Okay, next. Flying machines feel like they are a little too effective at countering all area in the game. Once you have enough flying machines, they destroy Hippogriff because they're faster than Hippogriffs. And then they destroy Wind Riders completely. They destroy Destroyers. Flying machines should normally not be your go-to against something like Frostworms, but if you approximate Frostworm population count, obviously they're going to destroy them too. I feel like they're a little bit too good when you have a decent amount of them with Flak. They pretty much dominate 4-on-4, and even Bat Riders cannot appropriately counter them. So I say just slightly reduce the splash damage. Don't affect them as a single unit, but just slightly reduce the splash damage by 1 per level.
Not too sure if I'm a fan. Because if you have a counter up for the flying machines, and there are several counters in the game, mostly heroes, like a Dreadlord, a Panda, then they are in the same trap as Wyvern are, that their damage output is really good, but they're ultra squishy. And then if you make them weaker, what's the prime anti-air of human? They are the prime anti-air of human, and they only work in numbers. I don't think, like, I see where he's coming from. And it's a very specific way of countering them. I don't think that's necessary, and it would probably weaken them too far. Maybe this 1 damage doesn't really do much. I like that he's targeting flag cannons instead of flying machines. But I can also see that tanks can't quite fit the role because it's too little damage and they excel via their damage uptime. This would... it's tough. I like the direction. I don't think it's necessary at the moment. Especially with nerfs. Like, okay, I don't know if he keeps Curse against Mechanical, for example. And then Mech would be pretty bad against Undead. So, at the moment, I'd be very, very, very careful of nerfing anything substantial.
I looked this up. Apparently, they have 7 splash damage to 75 range, which is very close proximity. They do 6 damage to 150 range and 5 damage to 325. Just drop it by 1 per level, and I think that's fair. They are counterable by Panda level 3 and 1-on-1. They're counterable by Dreadlord Carrion Swarm, but for the most part, once flying machines start being on the field, the air battle ends. It's just over. No more Wind Riders, no more Destroyers. You just play without, and the human keeps like 8 flying machines in the sky, and that just ends it. There's no reclaiming air against them. It's a little too binary. I think they're a little too good. So, slight nerf.
Suggestion from chat to add construction time might be the better way. Just a tiny bit. Because that is one of their strong things. And flying machines are the most expensive unit per population in the game already. So I wouldn't touch cost at all. if you put a gun to my head, I wouldn't agree with this change. But I do see where it's coming from.
Fast expansion. It seems like Orc is the only race that can't fast expo at tier 1, and Human is the only race that can always fast expo, even if you put all your effort into stopping it. Undead, if you try to expand as an undead and the opponent plays one base rush, you can stop an undead expo. Right? You can go Hunters all in, you can do double racks Headhunter all in, Human can rush it with Archmage level 3. But Human can expand every single game, and none of the 3 races can stop them. They can only try to hurt it. And sometimes with success, but I feel like more often than not, they just work. I'm not 100% sure how to fix this, or if people agree that it needs to be fixed. But perhaps you could slow down the power build formula in general, or maybe just add 5 or 10 seconds to the Town Hall build time. Now, admittedly, Town Hall already takes 180 seconds to build, and the Great Hall is 140 seconds, the Gold Mine for Haunted Gold Mine is 110, and the Tree of Life is 120. So it is already by far the longest, but if you power build it, then it is of course by far the fastest. And that is
it's also by far the most expensive. Like, there's a trade-off. Like, you don't have to power build. I think it's such an essential part of the human identity. And it's also like we see somewhat of a trend towards one base versus Night Elf. We saw a couple of one base plays against Orc today. On top of, like, the fast expansion, in my opinion, always goes in tandem with 2 things. That's towers and that's workers. Right? Because that's like a triangle that works together. And you already nerf arcane towers. Do you really want to nerf fast expansion? I feel like we have arrived on a meta where we see a lot of 2 base. And if you delay the human enough, you can counter expand, or your tech is so far ahead that you have an advantage anyway. And I would rather see more 2 base play, or even 3 base 2 base, than more 1 base. That's just what I like more in the game, right? From an observer perspective, especially. I wouldn't do this.
A great part of why it can pay off to expand that early. And you do it so early before enemies have a lot of units to slow it down. So they pretty much always get it. And I feel like it is a somewhat of a balance issue. But even with that, human matchups win percentage from both sides is not that bad. Like, I feel like it's pretty even for most of the races. It's hard to really get reliable numbers because there are so few top players, and only top players should be looked at, which even doesn't include me right now. And a large part of data that we get is from like a couple of players, or even sometimes a single player that just ends up dominating the scene and then might even call forth his own demise by getting nerfs against his race. So there's also a philosophical question if that's correct. Like, if you think one person is just exceptional and is so strong, then should he really be punished with balance changes and nerfs against him? But that's a whole another can of worms that I don't even know how to get into it. We've seen this with Maru in StarCraft. We've seen this with Happy in Warcraft 3. We've seen this with Gaming Gladiators in Dota 2 recently, right? So there's all kinds of situations where they do nerf the best strats by the best players, and it just keeps the game vibrant. So maybe that's okay too. So anyway, fast expansion, maybe 10 seconds slower. Footman maybe could be a little bit more HP, plus 10. I'm not 100% sure if this is a good idea. My goal is to make human single base more valid to compensate for this change. But Footmen also get used in fast expo, so probably this might not be the right call. Maybe it should be Riflemen get plus 10 HP, because Riflemen actually are the unit that gets used the least when fast expanding. Usually a human that fast expands against undead goes straight to knights and flying machines. Against orc, it's usually sanctums or griffins. Human Mirror, if you fast expand, you don't go to rifles ever. And against Night Elf, you will either place 1-base rifles or sometimes rifles in a 2-base army. So maybe this can help enable 1-base more. How much HP do...
This doesn't look much, but it's also early game where footmen are used, where there's not much damage in the game. I think the role of a footman is very nicely defined. It's an early game unit that holds value till the early stages of tier 2, and then heroes take over them. Or units with more abilities take over. They're rather cheap. You can do a lot with them in the early game, especially if you go for defend. Defend is cracked, by the way. Defend footmen basically force you into some magic stuff. And I love that they fall off this hard. They have a good use, and then at some point they don't. And that's right, because it's a tier 1 unit. You should be able to get better units at some point. If you buff them, and I understand that this goes together with the fast expansion nerf, like everything is in tandem. But this would also enable them to attack other expansions better. I think footmen are in a perfect spot. For my design philosophy, that a perfect spot. Riflemen, I gotta say I'm a bit biased against riflemen, and I also have an incredibly hard time buffing riflemen, or changing riflemen, or balancing riflemen, because I find rifle pushes to be incredibly lame to watch. And I also don't like pally rifles too much. And so I'm having a hard time buffing rifles. I do understand that rifles are probably the second least usable tier 1.5 unit in the game. Next to Hunts. But they don't power spike as hard as Hunts, so that's fine. Fiends are better usable. Headhunters, clearly better usable. So while I would love to see more stuff like in a fire rifle, I would clearly also love to get rid of that almost binary rifle push meta. But I see that my philosophy is a very, very, very different one from Grubby's philosophy. So he has a clear goal in mind that goes against my goals. So obviously we disagree on things. I think for his goals, to compensate for the fast expansion nerf, it's probably alright. I don't know if it's the right thing to do though. So, while I disagree with Grubby, I also agree with Grubby. Just, there's a split of the road somewhere.
Rifles have? Let me see. It's 535. Yeah. So it'd be from 535 to 545. Okay, next, castle upgrade.
I don't know if this changes any breakpoints, by the way. So, this is just my gut feeling.
20 gold cheaper. I cooked this up because it allows for some of that fun style that we've seen sometimes from players like Hawk. Hawk has had some pretty effective single-base strategies, like Archmage, Mountain King, Paladin, and then Rifle Priest, and then go for Inner Fire against either Undead or Elf, or both. And I feel like that's a super fun style to watch. It's very skillful on the human side, it's skillful on the versus human side. They're running a tight ship with like 8 or 9 lumber peasants, no fast expo, and just a lot of micro. It's the creeping battle that makes Warcraft 3 so iconic. So I feel like this might help with that. Though, of course, as usual, when fast expansions are possible, they also help the fast expo style. That's kind of what makes it complex. But I think this could be quite nice. Blood Mage,
so yeah,
Flame Strike is
I see what he's doing there. I have the same fear that it could make tier 3 then powerful, but then also you take the night stuff away. Probably not crazy hurtful or dangerous. Bit of a question if it's necessary.
It's a very strange spell. It's one of the few or only abilities now that can be cancelled mid-cast. You will lose the mana, you'll see part of the animation, but you don't get the pillar of damage. So you could lose 135 mana, like when you see Blood Mage start to cast and you insta-hex him, he loses 135 mana, no damage is dealt.
That
Maybe
sucks.
this will help a bit with that, making it feel slightly less punitive.
I think it's the wrong way to tackle it. I guess it was Remo? It could have been Remo. Had the suggestion to have a faster follow-up of the flame pillar after the animation is here. So you don't fall into the trap of getting your flame strike cancelled. I guess it's better than just nerfing mana. It is a very expensive spell though, but it's also on a hero that has basically unlimited mana. So it's okay if the spells are expensive.
You could also make it uncancelable, like
Yes.
Impale from Cryptlord used to be cancelable, and now it isn't because of a change Blizzard did.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that Blizzard is doing such changes anymore, because such changes require more engineering than just numerical changes, and therefore
I'm not sure. This should be a value in an Excel sheet when the pillar arrives, and you can just change this number. I don't think this requires engineering.
I thought maybe this is a nice way to make Flame Strike a little bit more common, when really it isn't that common and it isn't that good. Next up, Dragonhawk Riders. They basically perform their role of anti-air against large air. They work against Bat Riders. They sometimes work against Gargoyles, even though numerically you would think that they shouldn't work, but I've seen it work sometimes. If the Humans Fast Expo is fast enough and they get to tier 2 fast enough, they can sometimes try to outnumber the Gargs, even though, you know, Riders are more costly and cost more population as well. But they don't feel particularly exciting or useful in any combat that doesn't require them to cast Aerial Shackles. And it's fine for units to be counter units. Like a Gargoyle is a counter unit against air, but still has purpose against ground. And that makes them an interesting unit. So something just very basic, just make humans experiment with Moss Dragonhawk Riders after expanding against Dryads, or like one base Griffin Dragonhawk Rider against Orc. There's a couple of situations where this could be a thing.
I love watching Mass Dragonhawk Riders versus Night Elf. We've seen that in Foggy's GCS days, almost a decade ago. That was super fun. I love it. And I don't think this would hurt. I am a bit opposed to this mass air meta. No, it's not meta. To mass air strategies like mass Gargs and mass fairy dragons. That's a bit... it's not very exciting to me. But I don't think this hurts too much. But I could be wrong.
Alright, next up. Sorceress Polymorph. This is a change from Blizzard. From the PTR2, can now target heroes. We keep that, but instead of lasting 3 seconds, I think maybe it should only last 1.5 seconds. Even a 0.1 second cast of Polymorph would already have value, because it would interrupt any heroic ability that requires channeling, such as Starfall or Tranquility, right? So even 0.1 second would be obnoxious to deal with. It would interrupt Staff of Teleportation. 0.1 second Polymorph feels weird, looks weird, and doesn't, you know, it doesn't have a lot of lucidity in analyzing what's happening. It's not good for against new players, obviously. They won't know what's going on. You hear a sheep, but there's no sheep because it's already gone. 1 second also feels too short with that same reasoning. So I think if you're going to keep this change at all, maybe it should be 1.5 seconds, which feels like the minimum amount of time for such a late stage upgrade. Masonry upgrades. This idea also from Save Orcas. I think it's a very good idea. We had a streamlining change for early Reforged where Spiked Barricades for Orc was reworked. Spiked Barricades used to do 4 damage at level 1, then 10, then 16, I think. And it really just wasn't good. 4 damage at 1 did nothing, level 2 did almost nothing, and level 3 was good, but it only affected small units, and it didn't really affect big units. It had a really cool change where it has partially percentage damage and partially flat damage. And
that was one of the best changes the Reforged Blizzard team ever did. This was so good. So good.
And it was scaled down from 3 levels of upgrades down to 2 levels of upgrades. And why not do the same for masonry? Are you really in one-on-one ever going to upgrade 3 levels of masonry at the current cast? No, you're not. Nobody does that. And in FFA and 4-on-4, once you get the 3 level upgrades, it just ends up really being an obnoxious slog for anyone to take down your buildings. It's 30% bonus max health on all buildings, which gives Castle 4000 HP. And 3 extra armor, which is 8 armor with fortified armor. That is an insane amount of effective health. Against normal attack damage, if I'm not mistaken, that's an effective health of over 10,000 HP, maybe over 20.
You just want to Raider lame more. I know you, Grubby. I watched you back in the day. You love to Raider lame. You just want to do it bit more efficiently again. But keep in mind, you also get less gold then. Thank you, Keko, for the sub.
Like, or near 20,000 HP. It's pretty insane. And why not bring it down from 3 to 2? 10% max health for the first level, same as now, 1 armor, so the first level remains the same. The second level gets part of the level 3 upgrade, 15% max health, for a total of 25% max health. Cool. Right? And it used to be 30% after 3 upgrades. So it's both a nerf and a buff. You don't need to upgrade it as many times. Yep. And still +1 armor per level. So the total is 2 armor for a total of 7 on buildings, instead of the extra 3 for a total of 8. You
probably have to do something with the cost then as well. But man, save Orcas. Great suggestion. Love it.
Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker, I have a lot of notes, but just like the Dragonhawk Rider, I don't think it's going to create a very large difference. So Control Magic as a tier 3 upgrade. It was momentarily a tier 2 upgrade for a couple of years. I think it's in a good spot, but I think it's a little bit too effective against Witch Doctors, completely preventing Witch Doctor usage in Orc versus Human. And I'm not sure that these changes are going to appropriately cover it, but I'd like to stimulate discussion in this direction, and I think it's not a bad change.
This is an interaction that I rarely thought about. This is a very unlikely scenario, I think, but we're still on a mission to make Witch Doctors somehow viable in one-on-one if we can do it. So why not try something?
I think it's a good set of changes that I'm suggesting here. Currently, Control Magic has a base mana cost of 25 and then has a multiplier of the summoned unit's HP of 0.45. That means if you are taking a summoned unit that has 100 health, it will cost you 45 mana plus 25 for a total of 70. So if the Spellbreaker has 70 or more mana, he will take that 100 HP summon and it will deduct 70 mana from his pool. He has a total maximum mana pool of 250, so he can steal at most 500 health worth of summon right now. He has 250 mana, there's a 25 embedded upfront cost. It's not like he spends it first, but the game checks if you have enough before it allows you to steal. Right, so there's a 25 cost that allows him to use 225 on HP. If you divide 225 by 0.45, you are able to take 500 HP worth of summons. I hope my maths is right here, but I think it is. The goal would be to keep the average functionality of Control Magic the same, while making it less effective against something like the Healing Ward. A Healing Ward has 5 health points. Therefore, any unit in the game one-shots it. You could improve this to 10 HP, but then a peon or a peasant wouldn't one-shot it anymore. And that may feel frustrating when you were used to being able to do that. And perhaps that remains the best way for Heal Ward to be. But there is something to be said for making Heal Ward 10 HP, 15 or 20. But I also think it's okay if it remains at 5. I just want to stimulate some thinking about that. So Heal Ward currently costs 25 plus 2 mana to steal, which is 27 mana. And it can be done at 700 range. The Heal Ward then becomes the human's Heal Ward, and then they will start percentage healing for their whole army. You could of course keep casting heal wards and hoping that they don't steal one of them, but against any human of over 2000 MMR, if they have control magic, if you're going for healing ward magic, which you never do, right? But if you have it and you use it in battle, they're gonna steal all of them the moment you put them down. And then you have to kill your own healing wards. So it makes it unusable against human in all matchups. 1-on-1, FFA, 4-on-4. Should it be usable? I think yes, because it's not like heal ward has no counterplay. You can just auto attack it, right? Get a unit near, auto attack it, it's dead. You could dispel it with priest. You can still steal it with breakers, which, I mean, in my opinion, maybe it shouldn't be stealable by breakers, but let's just make it cost slightly more is my thinking. So increase the base mana cost for control magic to 45, but make the HP multiplier cost 0.40. So before 5 HP unit, the healing ward would cost 25 mana. 5 HP times 0.45 for a total of 27 mana. And after this change, it would cost 47 mana instead, which is still dirt cheap to steal a healing ward, but at least it's almost twice as expensive. And to show the change it would have on other regular situations, so that it wouldn't be weaker against other things, a 300 health unit now costs 160 mana to steal, and after this change it would cost 165 mana to steal. A 400 health unit will currently cost 205, and after this change still 205, so that's the break-even point. And a 500 health unit used to cost your entire mana pool, and now it would only cost you 245, so you can actually go a little over 500 HP, just a couple of...
I don't see any immediate threat with this. I think this tackles the problem while not attacking or not risking anything. I like this a lot. Thumbs up, Grubster, if you were the one coming up with this. This sounds very cool.
Of HP. So overall, very unchanged for any average unit cost, but almost double the cost for healing ward. I think that'd be a nice change, and not really a big effect, because I don't think anyone is still going to go healing ward against human. But every now and then, maybe you will see it.
That's right.
And next up, Spellbreaker feedback. Actually, they have an auto attack modifier that does 20 mana burn damage. And it removes the mana and then it deals damage based on the mana lost. I feel like that's a lot. Perhaps this is important to remain for breakers to be effective against Druids of the Claw.
Yep.
And perhaps it's not. I don't know as much about Night Elf versus human balance situation. I feel like human probably has a small advantage right now, and breakers would be a part of that. But I'd like to hear from the community. But I feel like 20 is too much, especially on heroes. So it could either be 16 against units and heroes, or just 16 against heroes. So either one. And I feel like that'd be a fair change, because every mana burn in this game is basically a little bit too strong. Siphon mana, Arcane Tower, mana burn, and Spellbreakers. Because Blizzard didn't used to value mana at the amount that players end up valuing it, based on competitive merit of everything. So I think that'd be a good change.
I, in general, agree that Spellbreaker feedback is really good, and it does a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, we now got nerf to towers, nerf to expo, nerf to knights, and then nerf to Spellbreaker. It is 4 versus heroes. Feedback is only 4 versus heroes. Grubby has the wrong numbers. Is there... Okay, let's disregard this. This happens. Is it too strong against units? I think humans have solid sources of damage, rifles, mortars. But in a mass caster army, you really don't. Your water elementals get dispelled. You might not have the resource for Blizzard. Clap and Stormbolt is of course insane. It is a nice niche use case for breakers, and especially with all the other nerfs, I wouldn't do this. But this is one of the things I mentioned at the beginning, right? Like in a vacuum, this is crazy because it's a double punish. You mana burn and do damage on top. And you have a super sturdy army. Because you have a lot of armor. But you know, some things must be strong for a race. And I wouldn't touch it. I don't think I would touch it. No. Nope, 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 nope. Especially if it's only 4 against heroes, which obviously it's easy to disagree from my perspective now because he had the wrong numbers for once. But yeah, then I think it's fine. And I think if he knew this, he would probably also agree.
Next up, Night Elf. Hippogriff Riders. Most of my Night Elf changes are to make units that barely see use to be more effective. So you've got Hippogriff Riders. They pretty much only have one purpose right.
Buff 4 to 16 as Grubby wants. Keck! I think you shouldn't touch this at all. Because it's a relatively boring interaction with spell immune units against something like Clap or Stomp. We love this. Like, as a viewer, as a caster, if a TC, if a Mountain King gets into a middle of a clumped up army, bam, it's a super cool effect. If you stand against a wall of magic immune units, and then A, the Stomp has no effect, so it's not cool, and then they take the ability to stomp other units by burning them. It's not great. Spells are what make this game cool.
Now
So
in
don't
Warcraft
change.
3 1-on-1 competitive meta, and that is to play against Undead after Demon Fast Expo or Keeper Fast Expo. So you go...
Okay, this has become incredibly rare. Like, 1 in 40 games, maybe? Did we see this?
convert your 5-6 archers to Hippo Riders, and then you go Fairy Dragons, and then you try to just outpower the enemy fiends with your mass amounts of air empowered by an expansion. However, Hippogriff Riders, I'm worried to like buff them too much. I was thinking maybe Hippogriff can get plus 20 HP to make them work a bit better against Gargoyles, to make Hippo Riders also have 20 HP more. It's not like they're going to be OP against Orc. You probably won't see them much or ever. You're probably not going to see them against Human. You're probably not going to see them in Night Elf Mirror. And it would pretty much just be a change for Night Elf Undead. I do think giving 20 bonus HP to Hippogriffs would be a good targeted change, specifically to help Elf against Undead. If Elf needs this change against Undead, right? If they need a buff against Undead, then 20 HP on Hippos could be a nice change, but I haven't listed it here. Next up, Mountain Giants. I think the theory...
Here I don't know. I think this wasn't addressed. If this goes on top of the PTR changes or not. Because if you take the Undead Heal Scroll away and nerf Nova, I think you gotta be careful of buffing any Night Elf Air in the grand scheme of things. Because that's already two big nerfs. But then it's also the Hippogriff Rider and not the Hippogriff. So maybe it's not a big change. So I don't know if they need an HP boost. Dismount cooldown. Yeah, 30 seconds is a long time. Yeah, should be closer to Burrow. It's in general a relatively boring meta, I agree, with mass fairies and mass hippos. Fun every once in a while. But yeah, I'm not too sure in what context this is put. To be honest, I don't see the role for Hippogriff Rider. Like, what do they enable? What do they do that fairies don't? They're tankier, but they're not magic immune. So that takes that away. I don't understand what Hippogriff Riders are supposed to do. That's a design flaw in general.
Mountain Giants. It's a cool idea, but I really just don't feel like it works. Taunt is too easily overridden by pro players, and it is only good maybe at very low level. Forcing a single attack issue on themselves of the enemy units that are near, it just feels like kind of a conceptually not working design. now that people have more than 80 APM, right? You've got higher
not
players
all.
playing with 150 APM or more, 180 APM, 200,
Yeah.
250, 280, 300. They're not going to be phased at all by a single taunt. And also, Mountain Giants right now don't feel like you ever make one of them. It's either you make none or you make a lot, and then you make taunts kind of obnoxious by having a constant spam of overriding taunts. Mountain Giants are
That's why you build at least 2.
also too bad at defending other units because they don't have any crowd control and they're just really big. Having one MG protecting 10 archers doesn't really feel like it does anything because you could just go around them. So the only way to protect yourself as a Mountain Giant is to make only Mountain Giants and nothing else. That's their current niche, which is weird and not super fun. It's kind of like if you go on a safari with your friends and 5 of you wear armor that makes you safe from lion bite, and you go a safari without a car, but one of your friends that you really, really like, you don't give him the armor that protects him from lions. And then you go gallivant in the Sahara, right? And are there lions in the Sahara? Probably, right? And then your friend dies, and all of you have like a terrible day because of it, because he doesn't have the armor. It doesn't make any sense. Likewise, you're not going to go 2 Mountain Giants and 2 archers and be like, cool, the Mountain Giants are going to protect the archers from the ghouls. No, they won't, right? You're just going to ignore them and eat the archers. So how about giving Mountain Giant a reason to exist in singular numbers? Just like the Abomination as a singular unit can do Disease Cloud on everybody, but you can make more if you want to have more meatballs. Same thing with Mountain Giant. You make them useful as a singular unit, and then maybe if you want more of it, then you make more of it, right? So there is a reason to make more Mountain Giants, because you want really tanky units that can also use a club and kill buildings, right? But how about give them another ability? Bulwark. All units near Mountain Giant gain 2 armor and 15% magic resistance for 3 seconds. I've thought about lower armor for longer periods of time, like 1 armor and 10%. For 6 seconds, but how about making it really short? This will increase the skill expression required for Night Elf to cast it at the right time, but can be used to mitigate damage on more vulnerable units, such as archers. This shouldn't work on themselves, by the way. All non-MG units near Mountain Giant, or it can even be like all elf units, so it doesn't include hippogriffs, hippo riders, or claw. Would it stack? I mean, it literally says so, right? Does not stack. If you cast it on multiple Mountain Giants, then it would refresh the duration. So if you're going to get blizzarded on your archers or talons, you're going to get thunderclapped, flame striked. If they're ignoring your Mountain Giant, you have 1 Mountain Giant and they're going for your archers or your dryads, you hit the bulwark and they momentarily gain more armor. And in doing so, the MG truly is a tank that essentially has a short pulse aura. Could be pretty cool, and it would maybe give them a reason to exist alone or together. Next, glaive throwers.
I kind of like the thought experiment here. 3 seconds can stop a volley or weaken a volley. It very much depends on the cooldown. I kind of like that Mountain Giants have to come in pairs. Oh, whoops. I kind of like that Mountain Giants have to come in pairs because they're supposed to be powerful. And then you could still override them. Could be obnoxious if you have to spam it. Obviously, it depends on the cooldown. So that's a big question here, what the cooldown is. I like the thought of a short burst of magic damage reduction. Because that's what it is, right? It's not magic resistance, it's magic reduction. So while effects like slow and stuff would still be the same. Coil Nova damage, Destroyer stuff would be weakened. I can see this somehow. I can see this working. I like this as a role, and he's right that it's like a Kodo and it's like an A-bomb, But bears kinda have that role with Roar Reju somehow. Then you have to make it 2. And let's be honest, Night Elf players already oftentimes forgot to use the Roar in the fight. And then you have to click another button? Well, that's rough. Unkillable bear? I don't think it's unkillable. 2 armors is crop protection. 15%. I really like the magic resistance thought. I thought about having a scroll like that in the shop. Depends a bit if this stacks too much. I'm not in general against it. Because I am taunt doesn't really work the way it's supposed to work. It's right. It's completely right. I would love an experiment with this. It's a little bit of a chore though. But it's also not that demanding. It would... Keep in mind that Mountain Giants are 7 food late game. So that's a big cost. You know what? I would let them roll with it. I would let them experiment with it. I like this a lot more than other crazier ideas. This would definitely require some coding. So I don't think this is realistic. But I don't hate it. I don't hate it. As long as the cooldown is quite something.
Reduce build time by 4 seconds and also increase their movement speed by 20. This was suggested on the PTR. I think it's a great change. The current movement speed is 200 and it would go...
Wait, was it? Did they change movement speed? Warper blades? No. Yes? No? Did I forget about this? No, it wasn't. It was the meat wagons. Not the glaives.
Go from 200 to 240. They tend to lag behind, they're slow. I also think glaive throwers build too slow, which also makes them repair too slow. Nobody is making glaive throwers right now, so let's see if there can be some cool glaive strategies. Some AP rush, glaive rush. Maybe some glaive sometimes in Night of Mirror. Maybe you'll ever see glaives against orc or human, and maybe you won't. They're not good and you pretty much never see them. Vorpal upgrade now gives it 2000 projectile speed on attacks, which makes it virtually not missing. Make it 30 seconds.
This upgrade sucks so much it needs to be reworked. Like, it doesn't... it's not the heat-seeking missile anymore, you can miss. But this upgrade sucks. I don't think anyone will research this.
It also allows them to kill trees. Just make it 30 seconds instead of a minute. Nobody's getting this. Ancient Protectors are one of the highest XP donating defensive structures. Most defensive structures like Burrows, Watchtowers, and Spirit Towers, Nerubians, Arcane Tower, Guard Tower, Cannon Tower, they give 25 XP when they die. Necropolis doesn't give any XP. A Tree of Life does give XP, 25. Necropolis can't fight, so it doesn't give any XP. Halls of the Dead does give XP because it fights, and so does the Black Citadel. And the Tree of Eternity gives more XP than the Tree of Life, and the Citadel gives more XP than the Halls of the Dead. So those do ramp up. And an Ancient of War gives 25 XP. Just in case you're wondering, oh, I get why it gives 60 instead of 25. While it is just a tower, like any other tower, there's a wisp inside. So it should give 25 plus 25. Okay, make it give 50 XP then, right? But 60? 60 instead of 25 or 50? That feels like a lot, and it feels unnecessary.
I don't think you can change it to 50. But lol, I never knew. Today I learned. I was today's years old where I learned that it's 60 XP. There's certain values because XP is depending on the unit level, right? And that is hard coded. So you can do 25. Wait, why can you do? Yeah, you can do 25, 40, 60, and 85. If all ancients are 25, why not do it 25? Make it 40? Make it, like, streamline it with the other towers. I don't mind.
Because even the Ancient of War, which is also a fighting building that has a wisp inside, that just gives 25. So why is the Ancient of War not 60 or 50, right? Ancient of Lore, Ancient of Wonders, all these single buildings that don't have transformational upgrades like main bases, they just give 25. So the wisp is not counted as XP given. And I don't think it should be. So I think protectors can just be 50 XP at least, at most. Maybe 25 or maybe 50 instead of 60.
Yeah, I see that it's different from an Ancient of War because it's not a production building. But does it really change that much? It's more than 25 because it's an ancient plus tower. Yeah, make it 40, whatever.
Chimera.
It's probably just an oversight from years ago where stuff was changed and they forgot an AP or something.
Feel a little bit too rare at the moment. They come from a telegraphed tier 3 building that does nothing but make Chimera.
I disagree with the Ultra Vision change, by the way. It's an insane upgrade, which is relatively cheap, right? I think it's fine to keep it there.
So I think protectors can just be 50 XP at least, at most. Maybe 25 or maybe 50 instead of 60. Chimera. Feel a little bit too rare at the moment. They come from a telegraphed tier 3 building that does nothing but make Chimera. Basically, that means they're tier 3.5 plus. You go tier 3, then you make the roost, then you make the Chimera, and several minutes later, after getting to tier 3, you've got them. So that's tier 3.5, right? So let's just bring their build time down from 60 seconds to 55. They're a little rare. They could be cool tiebreakers when fighting a human that does like a slow tower crawl towards you with mortar, rifle, breaker, priest, sword, archmage, blood mage, or archmage paladin, and a bunch of towers. Chimeras are useful for that situation, and so I think make them a little bit more available, right?
Dude, if this helps us to find a new stage for Bear Mirror, like the post state of a Night Elf Bear Mirror, all power to it, man. All power to it. I think this is a better change than like, let Chimeras attack air. I think Chimeras are a very well designed unit. They serve a role and they serve an additional role with an upgrade, and they really feel powerful like a 3.5 tech unit should. FFA Night Elves would probably celebrate this. All non-Night Elves and FFA would hate this. For one-on-one, it could be really cool. I don't know if this is big damage or anything. Blizzard will hate it because it's not one of their nice round numbers. But I'd love to see more Chimeras, for sure. And the values seem good. They are powerful. But if you build them, you mass them. Right? So should you maybe target the Chimera Roost instead of the Chimera? to help with the initial 2, but not for massing. Is that a better suggestion? That also helps with the telegraph tier 3 building, which I understand that he hates. So, yeah, I think change the roost.
Getting to tier 3, you've got them. So that's tier 3.5, right? So let's just bring their build time down from 60 seconds to 55. They're a little rare. They could be cool tiebreakers when fighting a human that does like a slow tower crawl towards you with mortar, rifle, breaker, priest, sword, archmage, blood mage, or archmage paladin, and a bunch of towers. Chimeras are useful for that situation. And so I think make them a little bit more available, right? Now for the Priestess of the Moon. Priestess of the Moon currently has Searing Arrows, and attempts have been made to rebalance it. It used to cast 8 mana, doing 10, 20, 30 damage respectively on the 3 levels. However, it's not an interesting ability. When you manual cast it, it actually has a hidden bonus of 100 bonus range, going from 600 to 700, which is a cool hidden tech that no new player could know about without either witnessing its difference with their own eyes or just knowing it from someone else that told them, right? Or reading the Liquipedia or something. So that part at least is unique. However, it's not very interesting. It just adds damage for mana. Also, it's in a weird spot conceptually. Priestess of the Moon is someone that gives 10, 20, 30% respective bonus damage for ranged units. And that is better when you have a lot. Anytime you have something that buffs something that you have a lot of, that's better than when it gives a percentage buff to something that you have very little of. Logic. So conceptually, she is basically a third hero. She's not conceptually a first hero. And the only reason that ever works at all is in Night Elf Mirror, Priestess, Mass Huntress, into Archer or Glaive can sometimes work because of various factors that I don't want to get too deep into right now. But we see Priestess Mirrors, and Searing attacks are a part of that, but it's mostly based around True Shot. And Searing Arrows will not be used as a third hero Priestess because she'll rather be carrying an Orb of Venom, which does a lot of damage. And is an Orb effect, same as Searing. So Priestess third just goes True Shot max, and then Scout Owl second to be something to use, because you're not going to use Searing anyway. So it's just something that doesn't really work. How about replacing it with something a little bit more fun and interesting that also has early game use? Maybe she would with Leap, like Mirana from Dota 2. Leap having 2 charges, 16-second cooldown, allow her to quickly traverse something like 400 range, 40 mana cost, and then add a little bit of bonus damage, 5, 10, 15, and 5, 10, 15 attack speed percentage for 5 seconds off.
Wait, that's something. So this is of course one of these things I talked about at the very beginning. Something, if you assume Blizzard can engineer, this would require quite some engineering. If you assume Blizzard can engineer, this is what you can think of. So it would be incredibly unique to have a spell with charges. I don't even know if that's possible. That is sweet and unique. It's basically a blink. It's basically a blink plus, I mean, the damage is, does the damage do anything? It cancels, like regen or something. Just take the code from Dota. Yeah, I know. But do you trust them to copy other people's code? I don't. No. And attack speed. What's the best use? You don't want to jump into a clumped up enemy army because bottom is too squishy. It's probably best to catch up to something. And is only she get the damage, or is that like an aura effect? Is that like a spell? Let's see.
After it. I thought about multi-shot, maybe, but that's also just not that interesting. You would have to split the amount of damage per shot. Be interesting if this could be cool. Leap in, steal an item, leap out. Leap in, kill some peasants, run out. It will be like a soft version of Warden Blinkage, but without the burst that Warden brings, and more of a sustained damage. Also keeps her safe. That'll be pretty cool. Scout.
Yeah, we discussed multi-shot a little bit. I don't see this work, really. I don't know why multi-shot is cooler than Searing Arrow. I appreciate that suggestion. But to be honest, would that change anything? Like, yeah, steal an item. But that would then be a harass hero. And Demon Hunter Keeper will always be better at harassing. To harass workers later, then you just go Warden because Warden has Fan of Knives. Like, does this solve anything? Does this bring anything of value? I don't think so. Not really, right? The Starfall spell from Dota is a good one too. I love the design. But again, I also think it wouldn't change anything because the bottom is way too squishy to jump into a situation and not get nuked. Can leap dodge a coil? That'd be cool. Kind of true. Yeah, that would work. I think we continue. We have to. The search for a good bottom rework continues, unfortunately.
Like with this, I think Priestess will become better, which means we may not see Scout Owl at all. It's hard to argue that Scout Owl is OP right now, so I don't see really that there is, let's say, a burning need to nerf Scout Owl. It's not seeing a lot of play. Nonetheless, I feel like it should have counterplay. It feels wrong to me, just like Junkrat Trap in Heroes of the Storm, that there's absolutely no counterplay. You cannot dispel it, you can't deal with it. The owl just is there, and you can't do anything against it. It will see you, and you can't remove it. I hate Scout Owl's conceptual invulnerability as much as I hate the Watcher wards that have dropped on maps like Turtle Rock, Goblin Shop, because you can't deal with it. Once they have it, it's just there, right? So how about you give an ability to the opponent of the Scout Owl that they can click on it, that blinds and roots it for 5 seconds. So you're constantly being tracked. It's on a long cooldown, like 1 minute, 2 minutes. You're constantly being tracked by Scout Owl. You click on it, they lose vision for a bit, and then you can quickly choose direction. Hide and seek. You can call it hide and seek, all right? And the opponent can blind it, and then they go somewhere, and then Night Elf needs a little bit more awareness. Why only for 5 seconds? I mean, I don't want it to be too OP. They may even see the tail end of you disappearing. Like, Scout Owl is not OP, it shouldn't be too long, but at least it would be some kind of counterplay that for the moment they don't know where you're going, and then you can use a little bit more subterfuge, because right now you're constantly in vision, right? And there's no counterplay. There's nothing like that for any other race. The Shade can be detected, Sentry Ward can be detected, but this cannot be removed. So I think...
Where do I begin? Grubby? Manual. Mr. Schenkhuisen. It is very much respectable that after all these years, you have faith in anyone at Blizzard or their subsidiaries. to be able to code that. That an enemy can manipulate your units. That's crazy. Respect for the creativity. I think it's a bit of a lame concept. It's just a click, like it's not a fun interaction. It takes a bit of your it's tasking at APM, I guess, but yeah, we're not playing Moorhoon here. It was coded. Wait, it was coded in 2010. Not so hard. Wait, this is done before. Coding is not a problem. I don't know about that. There was some custom games with this effect. I wouldn't trust him, man. I wouldn't. Like, okay, example. In Dota, we got the power threads. Everybody knows. A combination of items that is boots, and you can click on them, and they give you stats. If you click on them, they give you plus something to agility. If you click on it again, they give that same boost to intelligence, etc. The Blizzard team tried to recreate that, and that circlet was completely busted because you could stack it into oblivion. It was bugged. It was not very intuitive. It sucked. So, the company that failed to recreate power threads, you trust them to recreate this? No, 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 no. Keep your hands away from stuff like this, please. I can see how this is unfun. I also think that a shade is pretty unfun. I also think that 10-minute wards are pretty unfun. I don't think it's much fun for anyone. It's like a chore, more or less. But that invul on Scout Owls is a thing. It's a problem, that's for sure. How about... Okay, if we're dreaming, right? You can dispel it, but not damage it. Because it's magic. It's like it's a spiritual owl, right? It's like ethereal or something. Would that help? Make it ethereal? So you have to use a spell. You have to use a dispel. Is that maybe better? Or give it a maximum? Yeah, giving it a maximum is fun. I mean, Jesus, is probably necessary. But I think we should spend too much time on a Scout Owl.
It'd be nice. Next up, Orc, Great Hall. So this is going to be part of a set of changes that enables Orc Tier 1 expansion more while compensating the power of the Tier 3 Orc expansion.
And, good point by Chad, if anything, the Owl should get a buff to make it more usable and not a nerf. So, I'm not too familiar with the hero, but I would like to see somewhat of a role like Io has in Dota. Or Wisp has in Dota, where it's a unit that buffs other stuff, but then of course it should be incredibly fragile and also counterable, right? But the concept of the owl supporting the rest of the army is kind of nice, and I think it also fits the bottom thematically. Just have to think about like what values, etc., etc. And then comes the coding issue. It's a mess. Let's move on.
Currently, Great Hall build time is 140 seconds. Bring it down to 130 by reducing it with 10 seconds. Currently, Human Town Hall is 180, Tree of Life 120, the Haunted Gold Mine is 110. So it still feels like it's on brand for the general timings for expansions. It is a fact that no orc has ever tier 1 expanded in any competitive game and made that work. It just doesn't work. It gets cancelled too easily. And it was recently brought down from 150 to 140, which I feel like has helped rebalance the orc versus night elf matchup quite a bit. And it hasn't destroyed orc versus undead. Orc tier 2 expo used to be very good against undead, but it no longer is. Pretty much orcs don't expand against undead anymore. So the 140 change I feel like has been really healthy. But let's try to do 130, and then you can make Tiny Great Hall last 10 seconds longer. This is a pretty big change. That's a 50% build increase. But I feel like it's cool because it promotes counterplay for the Tiny Great Hall. Right now, you pretty much need to only...
Okay, stop. Before we go into the Tiny Great Hall. I think that's really dangerous. So, I think this wouldn't help Tier 1 Expo. I think this would make Tier 2 Expo way more likely. And we do see Tier 2 Expo a lot for Orc against Human and Night Elf. And even sometimes against Undead. When you play like Wyvern, right? And if you reduce the build time, then you get more HP per second while it builds because the HP stays the same. But the time gets reduced, simple math. You're smart, you get it. And then it's faster and it's harder to cancel it. I think Orc Expo, while it might not be the easiest to do it on Tier 1, it's super doable on Tier 2. It's a nice dynamic in Human vs. Orc. It's definitely doable to expand versus Night Elf. And against Undead, you can do it. It's risky, but you can do it with that Wyvern lame style, etc. And like otherwise tiny. I don't think either the Great Hall or the Tiny Great Hall are in a patch-worthy spot.
Look over your shoulder once if you want to plop down the Tiny Great Hall. And then if the opponent isn't literally there, you can just pop down the Tiny Great Hall and it's going to go up because it's 20 seconds, right? This makes it somewhat counterplayable because someone can show up and kill it. It cannot be refunded once placed. And it makes regular expanding not a dead choice once you have Tier 3. Because right now, regular expanding is just worse if you have Tier 3. You just don't do it. The only advantage of Tiny Great Hall not being your choice is that you would have to bring a hero there to build, which is a bit of a barrier of creation, but it's just...
And it costs twice as much.
So much more economical because you start earning back your investment much faster. 20 versus 130 means 110 seconds faster, so you start earning faster. You earn 600 gold per minute, so you're basically going to earn about 1100 gold back. So even though you spend 200 more on it, you earn 1100 more. So it's so much better, and
that's true.
This would make this more viable compared to Tiny Great Hall.
But I think it's an undervalued part maybe of taking a hero off the map. Depends on the map, of course. I would not touch Great Hall. If you touch Great Hall, this could severely hurt Orc vs. Human and Orc vs. Night Elf. And we learned that expansion timings are very, 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 very fragile. 5 seconds can make a sick difference. 10 seconds can make a sick difference. And I think Great Halls are in a good spot. Plus, Orcs learned in the past 2 years, I think, to fortify before Great Hall. And how to use their burrows way better. And put fortified towers there. I don't think Spike Barricades development is at the end of the line yet. That can still be improved. I wouldn't do it.
Next, Torrents. torrents have seen a lot of discussion recently. Blizzard came up with the idea to make torrents tier 2. And one of the most common community sentiments, although I thought it was a pretty cool idea, and we haven't really seen it play out yet because it's not on the main server yet. Much of the community sentiment has said, now Orc doesn't have a tier 3 unit anymore. And my counter argument to that is, they never did! They never did! Torrent has never been good!
Fair.
We've never had a tier 3 unit. And people say, well, now the only reason for Orc to go tier 3 is Lightning Orb, Tiny Great Hole, Kodo Drum upgrade, Headhunter Berserker upgrade, third hero. And I say, that's the only reason to ever go. It already was. Like, it was never about the Torrent.
Okay, technically, just technically, right? Berserkers are a different unit than a Headhunter, but I'm getting into actually territory. And Soen plays a few Torrent, and now, very, very recently, Lin is experimenting with Torrent against Undead. But, generally speaking, and this is what you always do in these discussions, he's right.
The only player that ever used Torrent as a main build has been me. In 2004, 5, 6, I've used Torrents in tournaments, I've made it work, but they suck. Right? They just suck. So, okay. Now that we're trying to make Torrent viable and to give them some changes, maybe, that make them not suck so bad, bring them back to tier 3 with the following changes that are going to be coming up. And this is to satisfy the community.
The big reveal.
But they should have a tier 3 unit.
The big reveal.
And now we're going to try not to make it suck, because everybody agrees they are not good. So the build time is currently 39 seconds, and that was a buff that happened a couple of years ago. It was buffed by 5 seconds, down from 44. Recently, because they came to tier 2, Blizzard said, well, let's make it 44 again. I say, make it 42. More than it was a month ago, but less than it was 5 years ago. But give them the following. I see a lot of people say Torrent should have resistant skin. Resistant skin is a mountain giant upgrade that makes them similar to heroes.
He's directly targeting me right now with the next section. Directly targeting me.
The things that slow units for a minute only slow heroes for like 10 seconds. Usually heroes enjoy a vast magnitude factor reduction in all kinds of debuffs, and that would then be the case on Torrent. But I don't feel like that will do anything. Although Torrent with resistant skin would not be Kodo devoured anymore, they could not be possessed anymore, I'm not even sure that those are good changes. I also think that having them only be envenomed for 1 second by wind riders like mountain giants and heroes is not necessary. I don't think that it helps them much at all.
It helps them a lot against Night Elf Orb of Venom.
If they're slowed for 15 seconds by sorceress or whatever it is, like how much 10. Is that? How much does a sorceress slow? So sorceress slow is 60 seconds and 10 against heroes. I think when torrents are slowed by 10 seconds, they will still be useless.
Okay, so, here's my reason for why this is powerful. So, we are going back to the wonderful world of MS Paint. Zip. Okay, we're back in Paint. Why does this help against Sorceress? The reason is speed scroll. So, let's create the following scenario. You have a Tauren, and he's getting slowed. Zip. This is 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Now you got another Tauren, and he's getting slowed for 10 seconds. Now what you do is, you pop a speed scroll. If you do that now, with 60 seconds, speed scroll is lasting for... Oh, you don't see... Oh, yo. Fixing it. There we go. Use a speed scroll. And coincidentally, a speed scroll lasts, anybody guess? Anybody knows? 10 seconds. So when you pop a speed scroll, you cover this area, but then the torrent is still slowed for this time. That's a long time. That's 50 seconds slow. 50-second slow. And movement speed is super important for torrent because they're clumsy. So if you put resistance skin on them, they are slowed by 10 seconds. And then you pop a speed scroll, and guess what? You are now not slowed. 0 second slow. I think this would help a lot. But you don't always have a speed scroll? Well, then get speed scrolls. That's not an excuse. I mean, sorry, I can't give torrent built-in speed scrolls. That's a bit ridiculous. But if your main problem is get into position and the crowd control against you, and you have an item that helps you with speed and against crowd control, you have to go for it. Only if there's no slow recast. I mean, there's also dispel against it, but you would save 50 seconds here. And then, of course, slow recast costs mana. You know? It's an interaction. I think this would be a help. And that's one of the reasons why. Plus, what he said helps against Kodos. They are very, very, very clumsy, and getting them in position will still be an issue. I definitely agree with that. But you also have to move your units away from them. I saw a suggestion to buff their attack range, to streamline them with abominations, for example. And that would probably be another very cool change.
Why not give them something that Dota 2 came up with very recently? This is a newfangled creation by Dota 2, and it's called slow resistance. It doesn't reduce the duration of everything, it reduces the effect of slow. It is not relentless like back in Heroes of the Storm that reduces the duration of everything or whatever. This doesn't work on curse. It's not curse resistance. It's not, cripple resistance. It's slow resistance. It's a new stat that reduces the amount, though not the duration, of slow that can affect torrents. So if a sorceress slows for 55%, which is what she does, it'd be 35. A frostworm and everything undead slow is always 50%. This is hard-coded. Now it'd be 30%. And then snare slows them by 100%. It's still 100% because they're ensnared. It's a root. They're rooted for the same duration and amount. And then the attack range for torrents to go up to match Abomination, 128. So now they can slightly more easily connect. They don't get kited for quite as much, but for the most part they're just the same as they were before. Would this help? Would that make them more viable? I think maybe it would. And I think it would also not have them be OP. Next up.
But couldn't you still kite them? If you get a 35% slow on them, does this fix any issues? In general, I have a problem with that because I think magic immunity, magic resistance, hardened skin, etc. is already a bit complicated in Warcraft. It would be great to have these values in the game, but that's also engineering, and we don't want Blizzard to engineer. You would have less attack time in the kiting. That's probably true. But does this help with the problem of torrents not connecting to their targets? I don't think this fixes the problem. But, I mean, obviously the resistance skin implementation is way easier because the upgrade already exists. You check a box basically. Unit has upgrade now. Boom. Done. That's the implementation. There is this interaction with the speed scroll. Speed scroll becomes a more effective counter. I don't think so. It becomes a, like, in resistance skin, speed scroll is more effective because it boosts you to maximum movement speed anyway. But then you are slowed again after the time. And with resistance skin, you're not slowed anymore after the speed scroll, unless reapplied, which is mana cost. So, interesting thought. Getting inspiration from Dota is, I think, a very good thing, if realizable. And I don't think this is realizable. It's kind of weird that that's the only unit. So you could go two ways here, right? Either it's the only unit with slow resistance. That's a bit odd. Or you apply this to other stuff as well, which would then be more interesting. But this, yes, this, probably no.
Demolisher. Increase projectile speed for Demolisher attacks by 20%. Demolishers were designed a long time ago by Blizzard in 2002. They were called catapults, but they were materially the same as they are now.
Archer is the only unit with Elune's Grace too. True, but is that good?
Now, same with Meatwagon and Glaive Thrower for the most part. And the thing about them is they do something like 100 damage, but it's a slow attack that can be dodged, right? And people got better at dodging. Obviously, players in 2023 are better than in 2003 on average. So we see a lot of Demolisher or Mortar or Meatwagon attacks.
Being unique is good if it works. True. Thank you, Moisan, for the sub, by the way. Don't know if I said this or if I just saw it.
Getting dodged. Some of the primary targets are Sorceress, Priest, and Dryad, and they dodge. So make it a little faster. Maybe makes them a little bit better. 20% faster attacks. I could not find data on how fast the projectile speed is. I just know that Glaive gets buffed to 2000 projectile speed with their upgrade. Maybe baseline speed is 1200. I'm not 100% sure, but let's buff it a bit. And also give them the same treatment as Meatwagon. 20 movement speed. I don't think we'll see a lot of demos, but I do feel like a buff at this phase in the lifespan of Warcraft 3 is justified. Troll Headhunters, based.
This doesn't increase their attacks, right? So it's just the speed, and then there's more downtime in between attacks. Could make things a little clunky. If the unit is not attacking, you don't see the animation. I would love to see this implemented. I think it's definitely time. I think his suggestion, like the argument is valid. In general, yeah. Maybe that will help a little bit. Supporting siege units could play a bigger role in the game. Maybe you have to polish the interaction of siege damage versus units then a little bit with how the attack type and armor types work.
Damage reduced by 1. This will be important because I'm looking to create some alternatives to Headhunters. This shouldn't affect the Berserker, which means that the usual activatable that comes with the Berserker will be coupled with the +1 damage buff that they lost from the base health. This makes Headhunters at tier 1 slightly less oppressive against human players. This is a suggestion from other parts in the community, and I think it is okay when coupled with some of the other changes. Windrider, +1 armor to Windrider.
Wait, what? Ah, yeah. It's just what's on PTR. Yeah.
Rider in mirror matchup, as they may not die as easily to a single Bat Rider explosion. It'll still be pretty bad if you get Bat Ridered on your Wind Rider. It makes them die slightly less hard to flying machines, though they will still suck. And they will still suck in pretty much most matchups. But it does feel like Wind Rider right now are overcasted and give too much XP, and they die too easily, and that's why we've always called them flying XP tomes. And that's why for the 10,000th time I've decreed I'll never make Wind Riders again. We do not see Wind Riders against human anymore. We don't see them in Orc Mirror, and you don't go Wind Riders in Elf if you ever want to win. So let's not pretend.
Well, they do help with creeping in certain situations, and to get more vision for a long time. It's like a token Wind Rider in those matchups.
That this is going to make them OP. However, we do see some Wind Riders against Undead.
Bro. We see, with the exception of Lyn, Wind Riders is what everyone plays in masses. And I hate that. It is such a freaking boring strategy. It's so boring.
Though I will posit that Focuses and Lyn's Wind Rider style against Undead are mostly born out of desperation and not because it actually has a good win rate. They still lose a lot with...
Well, I mean, it's not a good win rate because they play it versus Happy. Like, then, if that's the case, if that's the argumentation, you gotta buff every single Night Elf unit to the moon because Night Elf doesn't have a good win rate against Undead. Actually, they never won a series against Happy in 7 months. That's not a good argument, unfortunately. I like a cheeky, cheesy Wind Rider play every now and then. But not every game, man. Not every game.
Wind Riders against the top Undead players. They just don't feel like the other strats have been working very much. And in fact, Orcs have been trying to do a lot of inspirational, strategical deviations that have really not one of them has really been very effective against Undead. So it's not like...
And by the way, to add to this, I had a little exchange with Lyn, and he doesn't play them, or he doesn't like to play Wyvern because it's freaking boring. That's the quote. And he would love to have something else. And so Grubby is 100% correct that it's born out of desperation because nothing else is really working. I think Lyn's latest build, that includes Tauren and Bat Riders, has a very, very, very good shot of working. And then we have a diversity of like 5 units built into one army that is actually working instead of 2 different units that is like somewhat working. So emphasis should be put on that new Lyn build with great diversity instead of giving more power to the boring Wind Rider. But of course, ideally, you would find a way where the mass Wyvern style is not that viable, while token Wyverns are more viable.
Like, they are very good there, but it's the only matchup where they're being used. And armor will not matter much against Undead, which is why I think it's a nice targeted change to potentially open them up in other matchups. Because if your Wind Rider is Fiend Webbed, 1 armor is not going to save you from Orb of Corruption, Fiend, Focus Fire, or Coil Nova. So I'm always looking for changes that help open up a unit line in matchups where they're not being used. And I think 1 extra armor to them will help in other matchups without overly affecting, or affecting at all, the Undead matchup. To compensate, you could reduce their damage by 2 and also their envenomed spear duration down by 5 seconds. Otherwise, mass early Wind Riders might have too much of a chance to snowball because their damage is pretty good with, I believe, 48 to 88. And because they're like an air unit that comes out to tier 2, 4 population air unit, that makes them unique. There's no other 4 population air unit that can come out to tier 2, and therefore we must avoid the risk of snowballing. And maybe this will be a nice change. Next up, Witch style.
I wonder if that changes the issue. This will definitely not help against undead, but it's not designed to help against undead. It's designed to help against the other races. So armor is definitely better to target than HP. But then would you see the mass wyvern against the other races, I guess? Because their role at the moment is to increase the creeping, right? That's in like recent history. It's been their role, while previously it was their role to destroy towers. And there they rely on the damage. So if you take that damage away, would they still be able to fulfill that role? And I don't think the Envenomed Spear's duration is a big one, because it stacks, like all poison. Which is a big design flaw in Warcraft 3, by the way. I like the spot that Wyvern are in. I gotta say, I like it. If you want to target them, should you reduce their XP? So hard, man. With Wyvern, I'm in a similar spot than with rifles. If you treat them too well, you enable incredibly boring playstyles while you have better options already. But I do see there's problems with them. It's really hard.
Doctors. Sentry wards currently last 10 minutes from witch doctors.
Yo!
Now, I will preface this by saying that witch doctors do not see any play against human almost. They see pretty much no play against night elf. They see pretty much no play against orc. They see pretty much no play against undead. Occasionally, you will see one witch doctor just to play sentry wards. It pretty much never progresses to stasis or healing ward. But when you do make a witch doctor, because you feel like you won't die instantly due to lack of shamans, they will put down a couple of sentry wards, and 10 minutes is an insane duration.
Yep.
We've seen nerfs on fairy fire duration. It used to be 2 minutes, now it's less. Curse, Blizzard is looking at curse reduction. A 10-minute sentry ward on witch doctor has always been OP. It just happens to be impossible for orc based on the momentum and the timing of games in Warcraft 3 1-on-1 to actually go for Witch Doctor as a serious unit. So with the other changes that I'm suggesting and that Blizzard has been looking at, the PTR2 change to make healing wards better, Sentry wards should probably be nerfed a bit because it's such a strong spell. 7 minutes is still extremely long.
Yep.
Enough to cover most of a 1-on-1 for the most part. And while I love them and this hurts me, and this is where you can see my orc bias, I do think it's fair to reduce the duration.
I think 7 minutes is still completely insane. Like, the sentry wards as items have 3 minutes, and that's insane. But I realize that the unit is also in a spot where it's kind of laughable if you nerf them, right? So, like, I would start with 3, and I think that's insane. Yeah, I agree with you guys. 7 minutes is still way too much.
Next up, stasis wards. Currently, their stun time on units is 6 seconds, and on heroes it's 2.5.
Dude, how freaking cool are stasis traps. Shout out to the editor for giving the center stage to the stasis trap. Is that a great design or what? I'd put that as decor in my room. This is kind of me when I get out of bed in the morning. It's so nice. It looks so cool. Not only this looks cool, the bullhorns look cool, the stasis looks cool, everything about this is cool.
Might be a little bit too strong, can bring it down to 5 seconds. But let's make it hit slightly more likely. Good players mostly do not get stunned by stasis wards because they're killable, they're dispellable, they're visible for a while, etc. So make the arming time a little bit faster. It takes 7 seconds for it to be cast and then to arm and be able to stun you. And there was also a change that made the detection radius smaller, which is essentially a buff because someone needs to be closer to trigger it, which means they're less likely to see it early in a way. In fact, it suckers more units into the stasis ward's range before it blows up. Before, it would stun the first 1 or 2 units, and now it waits a bit, like the defenders of Helm's Deep against the orcs. Steady! Horde! Right? That's what stasis ward does with the smaller detection radius. But perhaps it triggers a little bit too late. So let's add 25 range back to the detection radius. From 175 to 200. Serpent wards, level 3 damage is pretty insane.
To be honest, guys, usually I develop a pretty good understanding about a unit and some interactions and their spells because I saw them a lot. For Witch Doctor's Stasis Ward, I'm always starstruck when I see them because they're so awesome. So I don't pay close attention. And I haven't seen them much. So I can't really comment if that helps them or not. More power to the stasis trap, but not too much power because crowd control and stuns are incredibly powerful. I wonder if the core design flaw is not the spells, but the fact that you have to set them up and that the Witch Doctor has to go somewhere and he's incredibly fragile. So I guess that's a bigger problem.
On the Shadow Hunter, and I don't feel like it needs to be that high. It's already very good against Huntresses, which is the main reason it gets used.
Yep.
If you get to Shadow 5, unless your opponent completely switched out of Huntress and is mass archers, generally Serpent Wards level 3 are going to win you the game, and it feels a little bit too dominating. It goes from like 13, 16 piercing damage to 30 piercing damage, and then suddenly to 50 piercing damage. It feels like a lot, and I feel like it could be reduced by 2. Okay.
I think it's a good start. It might just be reduced even further, but it's definitely a start. This needs addressing.
Next up, let's go to Undead. A lot of these are from the PTR, and I pretty much just copied them verbatim, these first 5. So let's move on to the next.
Crazy. I would have loved to hear something about the Nerub Tower. Frenzy, I talked about this in an extra video. Attack speed doesn't change anything. Frenzy research time is not enough to nerf their late game power. Frenzy isn't nerfed enough. It isn't. It isn't nerfed enough. And I'm quite surprised that he's not doubling down on that as well. Because I think this is critical. Same for Banshee Curse. Oh, okay, he's not adding that it works on mechanical. So it's just the duration, not that it works on mechanical. Okay.
This means that I agree with them. The Tomb of Relics, they propose to remove the Scroll of Healing, and I agree with that. This will force map control competition like any race must do. Goblin shop competition, and this is a good thing. You fight for the heal scrolls, you fight for the...
I think the 15 seconds are quite big for timings. Yeah, they're good for timings, but last week, and this is not the only time. Last week, I've seen 19 Frenzy Ghouls rush across the map and kill an orc. And that hurt my soul. And a 120 gold unit shouldn't be used that way late game stages. And this is not the only time I've seen this. Ghouls are too crazy late game, period. They are. They just are. Frenzy Ghouls are too strong. Fact.
For the invul, you don't give one of the races heal scroll at home. They already have Ritual Dagger, which means they have a way to heal themselves in their base. They have a multitude of other forms of healing. They can still get heal score from the shop, but they need to make the trip there and potentially find an opponent for it. Now, Wand of Negation is an interesting one. I don't know where the suggestion came from, or if Blizzard already had that note back from when they still had a larger classic team and they're now picking up on implementing it. I think it's very interesting. It does highlight a big problem that Undead has right now, which is that the only dispel that they have is a tier 3.5 dispel, and I think that's with a single L, but who cares? Destroyer's dispel comes out.
It's not only... It's almost even more than 3.5, because you have to sacrifice a super valuable unit to be able to dispel with a unit that in itself without mana is very weak and very expensive.
At about 9 minutes and 30 seconds, which is based upon roughly getting to Halls of the Dead at 5 minutes, getting to Black Citadel at like 8 minutes. You already have statues, you start your Destroyer training upgrade, and then you generally hit like a Ghoul Frenzy Destroyer and Dark Ranger timing at 9 minute, 9:30, 10 minutes, or 10:30 if you got delayed a lot, right? So that's roughly where you get your dispel, and that feels late, and it feels pigeonholed, and it feels tunneled, because if you don't want to die to Banish or Hex or Slow or something like that, right? You need to go to Destroyer, which is a very one-dimensional way to play for Undead. So I do like the idea that they are going to have a form of dispel earlier, but I think tier 2 is too early. Having it unlocked by tier 2 means it's a 5-minute dispel on things such as Entangle, Hex, Spirit Wolves, Force of Nature, Water Elemental, and by not having it have a cooldown, you can insta-kill a couple of Water Elementals, insta-kill a couple of Treants. And for the gold cost that it is, that's too good. No cooldown, comes out at 5 minutes. It's too good. How about locking it behind Temple of the Damned? Much effort has been done to promote Necromancer use, and I think it's going to happen, even in the current patch. Our main protagonist of the Undead race, Happy, has been known to be have a bit more inertia because he works so hard on his main builds that he doesn't really...
I thought he's gonna say Neo.
Experiment a lot with other things such as Necromancers. However, I have heard some reports he's experimenting a bit with it, and Necromancers are a cool unit. They were iconic. They shouldn't be too OP, right? But this doesn't really make them OP. It just locks Wand of the Negation, still purchasable in Tomb of Relics, but now there's a prerequisite of getting Temple. So now you've got a really clear choice. Do I go to tier 3, get Slaughterhouse, and get Destroyer training upgrade? Or do I stay at tier 2, or you can still go to tier 3, but now you're getting Temple. It could be a Temple and a Slaughterhouse, or it could be only Temple of the Damned, right? Not even a Slaughterhouse. Now you've got Dispel. So it truly is a different direction now, rather than being just an item with Dispel that you instantly get for free at tier 2 without making any conscious decision about it. I really believe in this one. I think it is a correct choice, and the timing of availability with this change should be about 6 minutes or 6 minutes 30 seconds, which seems like a nice in-betweener between 9 minute 30 or the 5-minute timing that Necropolis finishing to Halls of the Dead would be. It's still leaning towards early rather than late, but not as early as 5 minutes, and you need to make the temple, right?
I can see where this is coming from. This would never help against early tier 2 hex timings and early tier 2 entangle timings. So I think it kind of defeats the purpose. And I gotta ask, because I don't know this. Can you put items behind the building? Can you unlock items with the building? Is that a thing? It's a thing, yes? You can unlock with tier 2, 3 buildings anyway. Oh my god, of course. Holy fuck, I'm so dumb. I was totally blinded by, yeah. Yep. And my own race got a sacrificial skull that's hidden behind a graveyard. Yep. Just kill me.
Next up.
Since we want to incentivize more undead caster builds with this, obviously it makes sense. But I feel like even with undead caster builds, you kind of want the statues to fuel these casters. Maybe make it so it unlocks with temple and or slaughterhouse. But I think a cooldown is enough, if the cooldown is well chosen.
Frost Nova duration slow decrease. This is a PTR2 copy. Death and Decay. This is also PTR copy. Lich, Frost Armor. I have something to say about Frost Armor. At the moment, every ability in the game gets better when you get from level 1 to 2 and from level 2 to 3. There's a kind of linearity to it. We just spoke about Serpent Wards. Feral Spirits get better, they get crit, then they get invis, they get more health, they get more damage. Everything gets better by quite a bit. There are almost no, if not no abilities that get only a little better. The biggest ones I can think of are Soulburn and Banish. Soulburn and Banish instantly have an effect that does not become more pronounced as you level it up. Frost Armor's problem is that it gets almost all of its power from being level 1 and almost no extra power from level 2 and 3. So what Frost Armor does is it gives the 50% movement slow and the 25% attack speed slow no matter what level Frost Armor is. Now, I've talked about this before. I feel like the slow should be scaling, but that is a coding change that is likely not going to happen because every single undead slow has the same effect of 25 attack, 50 movement. So if that cannot be changed or won't be changed, then something else has to change, either the slow duration or the armor count. Now, the slow duration, I would say, already significantly goes up from level 1 to 2 to 3, 3, 5, 7 seconds. Most units will be kited and will have a slow attack, and they sometimes reapply their attack on the same Frost Armor target, so the slow duration barely does anything when it's longer. And as you see right now, Lich pretty much just never levels up this ability. There's almost no other ability in the game, or any, that gets as much of its power from being level 1, and then you don't care anymore, because what? You're gonna get 2 more armor, a single armor upgrade on a single unit. Like, that's what you're gonna pick an ability for. No cooldown reduction, no range increase, no mana cost reduction. The slow remains the same. You get everything from level 1. You never need to get it again. So you just go Nova 1, Frost Armor 2, Nova, then Dark Ritual, Nova, then Dark Ritual, then Death and Decay, and you will never upgrade Frost Armor again until level 9 Lich. That feels wrong to me. And it also feels very strong at level 1. So, I say, Frost Armor is right now 357 armor. Make it 147, right? You get...
That makes no sense at all. So, you're saying is, undeads have no incentive to skill this to level 2, and then you nerf level 2. And also, this is not a segue to a stronger level 3, because level 3 is the same. This makes Frost Armor even weaker than it already is. And then... Huh? He means incentive to level up. Yeah, I get that. But what incentive do you have to level up when the leveled up ability is weaker than before? Like, armor isn't... Yeah, this makes no sense.
Only 1 armor. Then you get 4, which is 1 less at level 2. It's 2 less at level 1. And it's still the same at level 3. I still think it's going to be an extremely strong ability that will be used just as much as before and will be almost just as effective because people are so slow when they're hitting that target. But now there's a real incentive for them to upgrade it to level 2 rather than just mass picking Nova and Dark Ritual and being, well, I just need a value point in Frost Armor. That's the word I was...
But, okay, so the reason for upgrading is to basically get a value in between what's currently level 1 and 2 on a level 2 spell. But then it's still weaker than what it currently does on level 2. So the incentive to go for level 2 is clearly weaker than right now. Because armor isn't the thing, isn't why you skill this. No. That makes no sense. I mean, no.
I was looking for. It's the biggest value point. So I think this is a great change. Next up, Cryptlord, Impale Mana Cast. This is a PTR change down from 100 to 90. I think it's fine. We don't see much Cryptlord. Maybe this will help see him more. And I think you can also give him 1 extra strength. Frostworms. Frostworms feel a bit too...
Does he need 1 strength? I think he suffers from not having mana, not having strength, but hey, more power to the Cryptlord.
Rare. And they come from a Telegraph tier 3 building, which makes them tier 3.5. Build time could go down from 65 seconds down to 60. They also greatly suffered from the erstwhile nerf from 2018, 19, or 20, which made their 10 seconds slow on heroes be only 3 seconds.
Dude, bring it
Now,
back.
don't get me wrong, I do think this was a justified nerf. We saw Frostworms sometimes against Orc, often against Night Elf, and 10 seconds slow on a hero is insanio style, right?
Yo.
But they suffered from that, so let's make them come out a little faster. They're still a cool unit. It'd be nice to see them sometimes. Boneyard cast reduction. I believe this is a PTR change as well from PTR 2, so it is an adoption of that change. Frostworm Freezing Breath Lumbercast also reduced.
I said for the Chimeras, you should speed up the Chimera Roost, not the Chimera. So it's easy to draw comparisons, right? I seriously don't know the values, but I think the mass ability of Frostworms is automatically reduced due to the fact that they cause more supply. So buffing their production speed makes more sense than buffing Chimera's production speed, and that's the difference. So yeah, more power to Frostworms, man. I would love for them to have a different ability, but curious what he says about Freezing Breath.
Also a PTR change. And I was also thinking, wouldn't it be cool if it did more than just lockdown buildings, which we don't really see in one-on-one pretty much ever. I don't think it's worth to spend this much resources plus the gold that it has to start freezing enemy buildings in Warcraft 3 one-on-one. How about bringing the hero slow back up from 3 seconds to 4? Will be a little bit more helpful at controlling a Blade Master or a Demon Hunter, which were their primary use cases.
Oh man, I would love for them to have the cool ability. I don't know if I said this before, but as they are designed around Frost, everything cool you could implement on them has to do with crowd control and slow. And then it's crazy strong. Also, like, in no time. This is so... Would love to do something cool with this unit.
Wagon, movement speed up from 220 to 240, just like the Catapult, the Demolisher from Orc. And this was also the PTR patch change suggestion. And just like demo, increase attack projectile speed.
Nice.
I'm not giving this change to Mortar Team because Mortars are already good. They're like a tier B or a tier A unit or something. So they don't really need it. But these two, not that good. Abominations are mostly used by themselves, a singular abomination, in order to spread disease cloud. Numerically and, let's say, what they bring to a player, it's just not enough. They're not tanky enough or damaging enough, and they don't have much utility. So you make one for Cloud, or you make a Meat Wagon for Cloud, and that's pretty much it. And it'd be nice to see more than one, because we see one and then none. which is a pity because they're so pretty. How about giving them 2 extra damage? Go from 33 to 39 to 35 to 41. So that's undead. Then there's the...
Don't know if that changes much. It doesn't hurt. I mean, more power to abominations.
Extra race white bound.
Not sure if it's necessary, really. I feel like they have kind of a cool role. And their damage kind of suffers because they are so clunky. Probably can't hurt.
As well, that we can look a little bit at. I feel like master training for some of the underused tier 3 casters is a little slow. Namely, Witch Doctor with Healing Ward, Necromancer for Cripple, and Sorceress for Polymorph, and Spirit Walker for Ancestral Healing. These 4 are not used in competitive play pretty much ever in 1-on-1, though Heal Ward is very good in 4-on-4 and FFA. But in 1-on-1, these don't get used. Can we make them 10 seconds faster to see them a bit more? And then dial it back down if any of these turn out to be too strong, as in particular these 3 spells are receiving compounding buffs, right? Because Cripple can work on mech, Heal Ward becomes cheaper, and Polymorph can target heroes. So compounding buffs are risky. That's what led to the Matt Morris disaster, where Night Elf got 12 buffs to tier 1 strats with Keeper.
We're basically the same person. We talk the same language. We shit on the same people. Appreciate the Matt Morris call out, because even after 5 years, he still deserves every call out for the shit he did to this game.
Alchemist, Archer, Moonwell, Huntress. So compounding is scary, but I don't think this is too scary. I think this would help expedite to see it more often, because look, is Warcraft 3 going to be around in 50 years from now?
Hell yeah.
How many Torrents and Sorcerers and Polymorph will we see? And how much Healing Ward will we see in
Probably
competitive
dozens.
Warcraft 3? We need to see that more often so that we can gauge the data on whether it's good or OP or underpowered.
That's right.
I feel like this is useful to get more telemetry and to get the community to see more and test more without being too OP.
It's going to be more like empiric judgment than telemetry, but in general I agree, especially since we can somewhat assume, hopefully, that they patch every half year.
Probably Banshee, Shaman, Inner Fire, Bear, Cyclone, Talon. They don't need these buffs. These are already good. Yep. We have seen historically much possession.
To be fair, Cyclone, maybe. But I think excluding Cyclone from this, because we don't see talents at all. I mean, the Moonwell buff might help, etc. But I think Grubby is holding an old grudge against the Cyclone. And who can blame him if you get tornadoed 10,000 times in your life? I get that. But we don't see Cyclone. We might need a little incentive on Cyclone, but also Cyclone is kind of toxic. So, but on the other side, we do the same with Polymorph. So should we streamline it with Polymorph? But then should we streamline everything? Balance is such a delicate topic, man.
We've seen some Bloodlust. We've seen quite a bit of Inner Fire. We see Bears all the time. And Cyclone has been an oppressive strat against Orc. We still see it sometimes. Right? I don't think these need the same treatment because these timings are really delicate. But these timings don't feel that delicate because they've never been used. So minus 10 seconds, right? And then Backpack Upgrade. It's a cool ability that has a lot of wow moments, that creates cool gameplay moments. Backpack allows most of the ground units to carry items, either 2 or 4. But we're missing out on a lot of cool Backpack Upgrade timings because the Backpack Upgrade, although it only takes 20 seconds, 50 gold and 25 lumber, it builds from the main. And the moment that your shop finishes, your main either is about to start tier 2 or is in the midst of tier 2 upgrade. And that's why you are never researching it, almost ever. Happy does for Undead, but Orc can't get this, Night Elf can't get this, Human
Lol, did it this week. Lucky coincidence.
Can't get this, except if they have an expansion. And
Lawlight had a play where he played 2 heroes and he was slot starved. So he was banking heal scrolls in his mountain giants to then pass them over to the heroes when he's not slot starved anymore. And that was one of the most beautiful plays I've ever seen, and I love it.
They somehow care and dare to put units on the footman, which dies so easily, right? How about making it researchable from the shop? I think it's pretty cool. We may see it more. And indeed.
So, how often do you have an idling main building? Quite a lot. Of course, you build some workers, and twice in a game at max you tech. But apart from that, the building is idling. Here is a question. Can you still purchase items from a shop when you do a research in a shop? I'm fairly positive you can't. So, what do you need more? Probably a shop? I think players just have a blind eye. Yep, you can't. Thanks. People are turning a blind eye to backpack and don't value it enough. I think backpack is fine. And I think backpack is also fine in the main. Because you don't want the shop to be occupied with the research.
These changes were from the PTR,
and
for the most part.
Begs the question, can you research something in a shop? It probably works in some custom games.
These are all PTR changes, and I think they're fine. Item-wise, I think Rings of Protection Experiment has become boring. All Rings of Protection enjoyed a bunch of buffs. +1 armor, +2 armor. We've seen a lot of these changes. And now it's kind of a Ring of Protection fiesta, which actually invalidates regular units against heroes in particular. Right? It doesn't affect spells, but regular units just slog away at like a Tanky Blade, Mountain King, Alchemist, or whatever. And it's not that fun. I think Rings of Protection are undervalued because they don't help you creep faster. They do have less autonomy for a player. Like if you get Claws of Attack, Circlet, or Gloves, or Ring of Superiority, all of these help you to creep faster, which is extremely valuable in Warcraft 3. Rings of Protection don't. That's why Claws will...
Well, you can tank more while creeping. Saves you regen.
Always be better than Ring. Just because you can creep faster, which means you get ready for crucial timings, crucial level ups, crucial abilities. No matter how much armor you give to the Ring, in some way, you'll always be happier to find a Superiority or a Claws rather than a Ring of Protection.
That's not the same drop table.
But I don't think it's the right play to add rings, armor, non-stop until you're happier with a ring than with something else. Because it's not a fun item. Like, yeah, we always hate it on the ring. It's like, ah, shucks. I found a ring instead of a circlet. Yeah, of course, it was worse. Right? A circlet has already been removed from that item drop table. Now it's just rings and superiority and gloves and claws. So what are you the happiest with now? Ring is one of the best drops.
Ring of Superiority drops with Mantle of Intelligence, Gauntlets, Slippers, and Cloak.
But I still don't like it because there's no dopamine in it. I'm not creeping faster, I'm not damaging more. My hero just doesn't die as much, right? That's never been exciting. That's why people sometimes sell Periapta Fatality, Talisman of Evasion, Ring of Regeneration. But they're all really good items. And I don't think Ring of Protection...
I think that you don't get the dopamine because the rings are preventing something instead of enabling something. I know my opinion is a bit unpopular. I think the rings got a stamina. No, that's not the word. The rings got a stigma from when there were ring +3, 4, and 5. So, obviously, you were stacking up a lot more armor because you had 3 rings in a drop table that oftentimes drop. Now you got 2 rings in a drop table with +4 and +5 because the ring +3 doesn't exist anymore. I think rings are in the best spot ever. Rings are fine. I do understand, and I am with Grubby here, that players still undervalue armor a little bit. But I think the ring +4 and the ring +5 especially is great. Leave my rings alone. I think the problem is the claws. The claws must go back to +4 instead of being on +5. I keep saying this. The rings are great. Don't reduce them. Don't make them sell up again. Because if you also, like, if you reduce the level of the ring of protection, you lower the ring +4 to +3 to be on the same level with the gloves, and then the claws are again up here. The problems are the claws, not the other items. The problems are the claws. So leave my rings alone. Get rid of them claws.
It needs to be as strong as it is. I think
claws
it
are
should
not
be
fine.
reverted. They're not weak. All right, those are my balance patch.
The only reason to give claws back to +5 is that people were outraged when they balanced them down to +4. But +4 is way more reasonable. The community was just bitching because they took Grubby's dopamine away. Make claws +4.
Changes. If you made it to this point, you really don't mind me waffling too much, or you're very interested in Warcraft 3 meta.
Hell yeah, this is why I'm subscribed to the channel Grubby Talks.
Updates and patch changes. There may have been a couple of changes that I didn't end up touching upon, such as Keeper of the Grove, Nature, mana cost reduction. I already went over most of these in my other patch notes, but let's just go over it really, really fast.
I don't think we have to do it.
I don't think this should happen.
Delete!
I'm fine with this Starfall changes. I think they're good. These Starfall changes are good.
Oh, true. Grubby doesn't want to bring the Moonwell region back, right? In his patch notes.
I don't think this should happen.
Yo.
I think Moonwell change is fine. This is fine. The Moonwell regen. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything else. So those were just something that I realized I ended up missing. So now I've covered everything. If you made it to this point, I talk about Warcraft 3. I talk about the games industry. I talk about RTS and other things. Make sure to hit the sub button so that you know when next I upload a video. Thank you so much for watching.
Thumbs
and remember,
up.
if you disagree with anything, I do like to read the comments and I like to hear your thoughts. I like to hear from all kinds of different...
Very nice idea and lots of work. Always great to hear your thoughts on Warcraft 3. Especially when so-called pro players are lazy AF and don't do the necessary feedback work. People like you and me have to step up, do what's right, and take the blame after. Yeah, man. Grubby, shout out for doing this work. Give this guy likes. He deserves it. There was my dear friend Dondo put together a summary with Grubby's suggestions. And maybe it helps to see them all together real quick. So, for human, arcane nerf, knight nerf, flying machine nerf, fast expansion nerf, rifleman buff, castle small buff, blood mage tiny buff, dragonhawk riders tiny buff, masonry, this is really cool, buff. So some essential units get nerfed. So this is overall clearly a human nerf. I think the tier 3 is not necessarily getting buffed, it's rather getting nerfed. And it's harder to reach tier 3. As I said, I understand he wants more 1 base, but I love human tier 3. And I think that's overall clearly a nerf for human. Like clearly. Elf, hippo, small buff. This mount could be cool, but in general also small buff. This could be gigantic. Flamethrowers, I think it's rather small. It's quite nice, but nothing groundbreaking. Nice, but not groundbreaking. Steering arrow gone. I think this is overall slightly positive, as nothing really got nerfed. Except the Scout Owl, but let's be honest. So, Grubby is inviting the Night Elves to dinner, I guess. But Night Elves suffer from Riflemen, and Riflemen got buffed. But Night Elves are also suffering from expansions, and they got nerfed. So, Night Elves also suffer from Arcane Towers, and they got nerfed. This should be... especially with the expansion being more attackable due to this and this. Should be a Night Elf buff versus human. This is, in my opinion, very dangerous, especially in combination with this. Orc expansion buff versus human expansion nerf is questionable, at least. Tauren late game opens it up, kind of cool. Demo's nice. Headhunters is what needs to be done. This weakens the early game a little bit. Wyvern. Yeah, it's nicely in the middle. But I think in general, it's more of a... it's hard to say if this is more of a buff or a nerf. This is probably meaningless. This is definitely a nerf versus Night Elf on the very late stages. But yeah, I'm worried about this. This is very good. Any interactions here that I see immediately? This clearly helps Orc. This is probably annoying for Raiders. This would help Orc against a TC. Yeah, clearly Orc buff versus human. Clearly. Also against Night Elf. Like, this is a universal buff against everyone. Undead. Clear nerfs. This is a push in the right direction, but I don't think it's anything groundbreaking like an expansion timing. So, how does that behave? Undead gets some strong buffs versus human. This one affects it, this one affects it, this one affects it big time. And this one affects it as well big time. I don't think this gets evened out by this. So I don't know if Undead needs a push versus human. Also, I don't think it's enough to help Night Elf versus Undead. This is sweet, but I don't think it helps much. But then we also got the okay, we do have the existing changes of Nova, heal scroll gone, Nova nerf, heal scroll gone, and then Hippo Riders could make Mass AR a bit oppressive. And versus Orc, I mean, this is an Orc buff, clearly. This is an Orc buff if you play it the way Lin plays. This makes Wind Riders pretty good against Alchemist, definitely better against Alchemist. So again, that helps in the late game. Yeah, clear Orc buffs. I do see a bit of Orc bias. I do see a bit of undead, not undead bias, but undead overperformance is possible. Yeah. That's my takeaway. Now I'm